What's going on, guys? Ben here with Strong Insurance. Today we are going to discuss OOS scores, or out of service scores, what they are, why they're important, and how they are calculated. So, out of service scores are exactly what they sound like. If you get put out of service, it goes against you in the scoring system. So, let's look at how these scores are calculated. So, if you go out of service one time and you've only had one inspection, you are now a 100% out of service score. Now, these are all percentage based. So, on the flip side, if you've been inspected four times and you've been put out of service one time, you are at a 25% out of service in that respective category. Now, what categories are there when it comes to being put out of service? There are three primary categories. You are going to have your driver out of services, your vehicle out of services, and your hazmat out of services. Now, obviously, if you're not hauling hazmat, that does not apply to you, but your driver and vehicle out of services will always apply to you when you're operating under an authority. So once again, let's look kind of how those are calculated. They're all percentage based, and they're looking at putting you up against your peers, the industry standard, the national average. So the national average for driver out of services is right around 10%, 9.68% in the United States, which means 1 out of 10 inspections are failed for a driver violation of some sort. Now, on the vehicle side, it's even higher. We're at a 33% right now in the United States, which is 1 in 3. 1 out of every 3rd inspection is failed for a vehicle maintenance concern. And then on the hazmat side, we're right around 6, 7%, 6.5%. So it's like 1 in 15 are failed. So and once again, if you're not hauling hazmat, that doesn't really apply to you. But what everyone is looking at, whether it be insurance companies, shippers, brokers, etc., what they're looking at is how do you stack up against the national average. So if you're, been inspected 15 times and you've only failed one, you are going to be better than the national average on the driver front. If on the vehicle front, you've had your vehicle inspected 20 times and you've only failed 3 times, you are going to be better than the national average. That is going to relate to cheaper insurance rates and the better likelihood of getting more secure contracts, direct broker shipper relationships, etc. So let's look at some of the common causes that we see for out of service violations. So invalid CDLs, failure to have your medical card with you or your med cert is one of the biggest things we see in the driver category. We also see a ton of hours of operation violations. This speaks for itself. Over driving yourself is one of the biggest violations we see, as well as substance abuse and alcohol use. Now, one of the biggest things that we see when it comes to substance abuse and alcohol use is people are getting put out of service for having a beer can in the truck. You can't even have an empty beer can in these trucks at any given time. It doesn't matter if you were on home time and you had a beer sitting in the truck and you threw it under the back, under your bunk in the back. It doesn't matter. You cannot have alcohol in these trucks at any time while operating commercially. So, big thing to keep in mind. A lot of people don't even know that. So definitely something to keep in mind. On the vehicle front, we see three primary things that are causing these out of services. First being faulty brakes. Not having enough brake pad left there. There's a few different things that you can get in trouble for with your brakes. So making sure your brakes are on point is very important. And tire tread is another very important one that we see overlooked all the time. And then, of course, the last piece is non-functional lights. You've got to have lights on these trucks. They're giant. You shouldn't be able to miss them in the first place, but all your lights need to be working. That is the top 3 reasons we see people get out of service violations. And then on the hazardous side, which this only applies to the select few of you who may be in the hazardous hauling space that are watching this video, but we're looking at unsafe handling practices and then improper signage, right? You're hauling something that you're not signed for on the trailer. Those are things that are going to put you out of service in the hazmat space. So let's look at ways to lower your out of service score. So vehicle maintenance schedules and programs is definitely going to be the number one way to reduce your out of services on the vehicle front. Driver, it's self-explanatory. Get yourself a driver's program. If you don't have one, get one put in place, a driver onboarding, a reoccurring driver training program, making sure that not only do these guys know that they have to have their med certs, that they have to, log their hours correctly, whether it's old school paper logs or ELD. And then also those two things go hand in hand, making sure your drivers know when maintenance is needed on these trucks just as much as you do as the fleet owner or fleet manager. If they see a tire that is, wearing on one side more than the other, it's got some camber to it and it's starting to wear on the inside, but not the outside, they need to let you know. Don't just run it and hope the boss doesn't get mad. Let us know. Let's get a new damn tire on it. Let's not get put out of service. Why is the out of service so important? Well, a couple things. The one of the biggest is it's time spent not on the road. When you get put out of service, it is time that the wheels are not moving and you are not making money. And you've got to wait for a tire. You've got to wait for brakes. You've got to wait for whatever it may be to get back on the road to get your freight hauled. So downtime is one of the biggest issues with your out of service scores. And then of course, insurance and your reputation with shippers and brokers. Insurance companies are definitely looking at your out of service scores. They want to see you, it's not the worst thing in the world to be slightly above the national average, but they don't want you with a 75% out of service on your drivers. Obviously, you have a driver issue at that point. And in order for an insurance company to really take you serious, they're going to want to see your driver training program, your driver onboarding program, especially if you're a fleet of 10 plus. They're really going to start to dig into what are you doing to prevent these out of service concerns in the future. So an insurance standpoint and your reputation with shippers and brokers is one of the primary reasons to make sure that your out of services are on point. Now, like I said, one of the biggest issues I see with the way that the out of service system works is it penalizes the smaller guy over the big guy. If you've got 500 trucks and you have 3, 4, 10 out of services, that's a small incremental percentage increase versus John, who has 4 trucks, who is failing one inspection for a driver, and the national average is 10%, and now he's been inspected 4 times, failed one, and now he's got a 25% out of service. So on paper, he looks worse than the next guy who's failed 10 inspections on 500 trucks. So there is some nuances there, but that is out of service in a nutshell and why it's so important. If you have any questions about your out of service or you're needing help getting your out of service down, you can do 2 things. One, reach out to Strong Insurance. Down below this video, there's a link to reach out to any of our TRIP certified agents. There's a second link down there to reach out to John Stanley with Synergy Solutions. He is Strong Insurance's preferred risk management partner. You do get a discount if you're a client of Strong Insurance to work with John Stanley over there at Synergy Solutions. He does a fantastic job to help you get back on track if you're kind of off track. And if you're not off track yet, but you're concerned that it might happen, no better time to get this stuff in place than before it starts to happen. So if you want to learn more about the trucking industry and the trucking insurance industry, feel free to give us a like, follow, and subscribe. And as always, keep it rubber side down.